Hi there, I'm Christine Conrad, and you're watching another episode of Innovative Tac-Tips, where I interview or have a great conversation with trailblazers in every field and every industry. And I'm sitting down with Carley Salmon, who is a leader at Microsoft. Hi, Carley. Thank you for joining. But before I tell everyone what you do, I want you to tell everyone what you do, and then I have a bunch of questions for you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you. Never really thought of myself as a thought leader, but here we are. But yeah, so Carley Salmon, I work at Microsoft. I'm a security technical specialist for the Department of Defense. So I help them go down their security journey using the tools that they've invested in, whether it's Microsoft or other, and really just hardening the network, securing the data, and protecting the end user. So it's pretty much what I do now.
You're kind of like a superhero, like a cybersecurity superhero, right? You're helping people. Well, actually, you're helping people save the day. So you're like either Yoda or like the Ninja Turtles. Who was the who? Oh, what was his name? Anyways, I have to walk under a door to figure out who the mentor was. But you get to basically help companies guard their data, guard their insight, or I guess data intellect is probably the correct term. But to not to dive into that side of things, how did you kind of tell me and everyone a little bit of your backstory, because I looked at your LinkedIn, right? It's a snapshot of just your career, and kind of how did you get to where you are today, and kind of give us a little bit of insights around that and what makes your heart sing about it.
Uh, so I'll answer that last one first. So what really drives me, what makes my heart sing about it is it's purpose driven, right? So I'm very much, and when I go into the backstory, very kind of purpose, mission driven person. And so while I am at Microsoft, I'm in industry, the customers that I am working with are our military. And so that, veterans and those who are serving, hold a very special place in my heart. So the work that I do every day is to protect them, to protect their data, um, and to make them be able to work in, this very technology driven world that we live in efficiently, safely, while they are out protecting our country and our rights. So that is really what drives me. And so how I got here is a very windy and rocky road. But I think all there are many of us in this industry, or there are just many of us in general who have paths like that. So I love kind of talking about it. So I graduated from the University of Florida with a health science degree, actually. So totally different field. I could use technology, but was never really diving into the back end of it. And then I actually commissioned into the Army National Guard when I graduated. And so I was kind of doing that, splitting military and civilian. So I was kind of working in my degree field for a while, and was in the Army, deployed, went to flight school, became a Black Hawk pilot, which was really kind of my
Wow.
goal.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a really cool skill to learn. Um, Probably one of the main things I miss about serving is doing that fun stuff. But was a people leader of soldiers, and that was always what drove me then. So joining the military was kind of my first step into purpose, mission driven life, and it's just kind of continued throughout. But really kind of about 10 years ago, which is really where the pivot into IT happened. I call it the perfect shitstorm occurred.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of hit a rock bottom. Things in my military career weren't going the way that I was hoping. Um, things in my civilian career weren't being fulfilling. Kind of on the personal side, I wasn't really feeling fulfilled or, as content as I wanted to be, and ended up actually getting a DUI. And I talk about it because it's really the catalyst that started kind of the journey that I'm on now. And so when that happened, basically, like, did a whole big pivot, moved to Virginia, and like with pretty much nothing almost at that point, with everything that had been going on, and got a job as a contractor at DCMA, which is the Defense Contract Management Agency. So they support our military by managing the contracts that they have with industry that make our planes, helicopters, etc., weapons,
Mhm.
all of that. And I
Mhm.
started working for the director of IT, cybersecurity, who was also an aviator. So he explained IT and technology to me in aviation terms. So really learned operational security on the cyber side through that job. Then I became a government civilian working in compliance for cyber and all in the systems at DCMA. Then pivoted to becoming a cybersecurity assessor of
Mhm.
our government contractors. Are they protecting the information that the government gives them? Again, then protecting the warfighter. And so got a different view into kind of the supply chain there. And then about 2.5 years ago, came over to Microsoft to kind of go to the other spectrum of that um, protection. And now, selling and helping DoD use the security tools that are then helping, that our warfighters are using. So, um, while 2015 was a really bad year, it led to a lot of really great things. And so that's kind of why I talk about it, because you can have failures, you can do things wrong. It's what you do next that matters.
Yeah, you kind of answered my question about like what failure that you had later set you up for success, because I believe failure is just throwing the towel, right? Giving up, not progressing forward, and like hearing that, it sounds like you have a lot of moxie and a lot of grit. And I think when it comes to really pushing forward and like overcoming challenges, you have to you've got to make it game. I always say I use football puns or like football terminology. Like you've got to make a game time decision, just because it's fun, right? Plan words, but also like it is real life. Like you've got to make a game time decision, and you have to figure out like what's the best way through something is like just to push through. And so, is there like another, I guess, through that story, is there like another failure that you might have had that set you up later for success? Within that, I guess, is there like another? Because you pretty much, like to me, that is awesome and like is inspiring. So I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah, so, the DUI was like, in a sense, like the major, if you will, like failure that
Mm-hmm.
springboarded everything forward. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a person who tries not to dwell in the negative, or I can't fester because I can't change what happened. So
Mm-hmm.
what can I do to try and fix it, to move forward? Um, in a sense, to like survive this issue. Um, and part of that, like the DUI wasn't really like the thing that um set my military career, because I got out like a year or so later. Um, I wasn't like I was having some, if you will, like failures there. Um, like I wasn't flying, but I came back from flight school and like told you're not a priority to fly, dealing with some personality, political, I don't know. I don't place blame. I take ownership. I think that's the biggest thing too, is taking ownership of what happens. So, you know, there are some people who are like, well, that person always had it out for you. I can't change that. So, and unfortunately, like that
Mm-hmm.
snowballed into why things weren't going well in my military career,
Mm-hmm.
or they weren't going
Mm-hmm.
really as I was hoping they would go.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I made the move to Virginia, um, I also made the decision to get out because it wasn't it wasn't bringing me joy. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And if I couldn't be there 100% for my soldiers, like they deserved a leader who could be there 100% for them. And
Mhm.
I just wasn't in a mental headspace to do that. And I
Yeah.
really held a lot of guilt and shame with how my military career ended. Like, how can I mentor future leaders? Because that's something that I do. And I've done is a lot of like mentorship with I've done a few things with like the Naval Academy, with a veteran midshipman, uh, spring break, and it's just a big mentorship thing. And the first time I
Mhm.
did that, like it really, I felt like super big imposter syndrome, like, but like in a sense, like I failed. How can I teach them to be good leaders if I failed? And it was through that first engagement with these now like leaders of the Marine Corps and the Navy that I realized that I still have like I still can. They can learn from me. They can learn from my mistakes, but B, those mistakes don't define my entire service. And so I can I can lean into like the accountability piece of it because I think accountability is the best way to get through something bad that happens, whether it's a
Mhm.
failure or something negative, like taking that ownership, but then what do you do next? And I think it's because of my accountability, my humble approach to the things that have happened, both good and bad, um, as well as my work ethic that even if something bad has occurred, I'm still able to thrive because of the person that I am and how I carry myself and how I treat other people. Um, so
Yeah.
I think that's really kind of in a they go together, but they're two very different examples of kind of how failure has shaped how I am today. Um,
Yeah. They say success is taking accountability, whether like whatever happens the outcome, right? Taking accountability for your part of it, like depending, like because you can't can you so how you have so many variables that you can control, right? And you can control how you act next, right? How you what's the next action that you take. So that's important. And then I have a little place in my heart for veterans too. I wasn't in the military, but I have a lot of military influence. And then just seeing the good, bad, and ugly of how someone can take on, like when you get it, right, you thrive and you've been specialized depending on what, your occupation was in the military. And when you get out, you're like, what do I do next? Right. What, like, how can you translate this into civilian terms? And I think it's important for you
yeah,
to help them, right? To help them on the journey. To me, it's like I haven't been in the military, so for me to help them, it's a different, obviously, like relationship. But for you to be like, I understand what you're going through, all that stuff. I think that's like we need more of that, right? Because I think at the end of the day, anyone can do what they want to if they set their mind to it. And I do want to jump into like books because I'm a bookworm, and I think literature or nonfiction, fiction, self improvement, all these different books can help someone, right, see a different side of, where they want to go in life. I always say, like, I'm still working on like what I want to be when I grow up, right? I'm still working, progressing in that direction. Is there
same
any
girl,
books?
same,
Yeah, like I'm still working on that. Still it
same,
takes a village. um,
exactly.
what what books or book has most influenced your life, and then um, what book have you given most as a gift? Or it could be a podcast too. It could be anything, really, anything that's adding value from either a obviously written or audible um, thing.
Yeah. So before I get into the books, I want to, because you talked about like helping veterans transitioning, all of that, I think, and I love that. And there's a ton of people who haven't served who give back to the community that has. And I think that's fantastic. And I think that's what kind of makes um, just our community as a whole really great. And It is tough, or it can be tough. So, I do stuff with Microsoft. They have different transitioning programs where people come in and kind of do internships at Microsoft. And I volunteer with that as a mentor for like the professional skills. Like, how do we translate what you've done in the military to what somebody will understand who's not been in the military? And I have a bunch of coworkers who also do that too, because um, it's important. And there are certain things that like our military members can give to a company, even if it's not like the technical skill, if you will, right?
Hmm.
Like there's innate traits and soft skills that employers are looking for that our military members have when it comes to discipline, when it comes to professionalism, and a whole slew of other things. And so ensuring that they know that and that they can translate that onto their resume is important. And there's a ton of different organizations that do that and help that. But I know like it's one of those pay it forward things for me, right? Like I did not get
Hmm.
here without the relationships and people that I have in my life, as far as like how my career has advanced. And so I want to pay that forward to whomever I can help. And um, e- even if it's like not necessarily like even if it's just minuscule or you know making another connection, right? Because I might not be the right person, but I know a guy, I got a guy, like, and that's one thing that about me that I love is this. I'm a connector, and that's really kind of what I've built myself on, is being that connector and building relationships. So when it comes to books, um most influential in my life, there are a lot of things, and I think because I do so much and there are different things that have happened like in my adult life, from like a routine and a habit standpoint, like it was part of like my job in the military. And so I realized once I got out, like because I didn't have that, if you will, like convenience, I think the power of habit is a really good one. Helping you figure out how to build great habits, whether it's for personal or for work, and different things that means. Um, I forget who wrote Power of Habit, but another really good one is Start with Why by Simon Sinek. Um, and I love that book, and especially because, one of the things that I always ask, or when we talk, like when I talk in a big group or present, I always start with what my why is. Because if you're not here for like, you know, personal reasons, you're not going to give it your all. And so kind of like when you ask what makes your heart sing, that's like, what's my why? So Start with Why by Simon Sinek is a really great book, that has been very influential in my life. As well as, so a book that I've recommended, I think most to people, um, is called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. Um, and he's got another book called Scarcity Brain that I'm in the middle of reading. I've had it on my shelf on my to be read list for like 6 months or whenever it came out. I pre-ordered it. Um, but he's a really good writer and kind of started out as like he's a journalist, really. But he's written a lot about health and wellness. And what I like about the comfort crisis is that he comes at it from many different angles, and it's very objective. It's not biased. It really just kind of digs into, how we have evolved as humans, and we're in this comfortability life. And so, how do we disrupt that to get back to like being more creative? And like, they always say growth is in the uncomfortable, and I think with like the comfort crisis, not just growth from like a personal or physical perspective, but just creatively, you know, there is no way to have boredom, right? And you're now starting to see more people go towards like unplugged weeks and going off the grid and things of that nature because they're trying to get back to basics. And so the comfort crisis, like he talks to nutritionists and physical therapists and theologists and, ex special forces guys, and he brings this all together, and gives you very easily actionable ways to be better. And so I really like that book, and I think that's the book that I've recommended the most to friends, families, coworkers. I really enjoy his writing, and he has like a continued like community now where there's more pieces of things that he's, started writing about. And so he deep dives all these different things and brings in experts in those fields. And again, comes at it from a very objective way. Like I don't feel like there's a slant in it, um, which I think can be hard to find on different types of science based like articles or advertisements, etc.
Yeah, no, totally. I make a joke. I was like, if it was easy, like eating or like doing good, like working out and eating, everyone would have a six pack, right? What everyone would
Yeah.
have. And so it's like, we understand that it's not easy, but the thing is like, it's rewarding in the end. And so it's good that from the book that you just spoke about, like objective, because everyone has, right, a different point of view, regardless if they went through the same class or the same degree or this, the same, if everything was the same, they still have the same different outlook of, or they might, again, I don't want to
Yeah.
generalize that, but it's like there's different circumstances how people absorb or perceive things. And so it's always good to be objective as first, because again, at the end of the day, the most important thing is adding value. Like, did it improve my life, and did I learn something, and can I benefit from it, and apply it to my own life? And so this podcast is kind of why I started it, because individuals like you can give your experience, right, and your wisdom, and people who are listening might be going through the same thing, or they're like entering in the same thing. And it's like, the more that we can mentor each other, or like, brotherhood, sisterhood, right, in the military aspect. And I love Simon Sinek, because what he like, I don't know if he's still analyzing the military like camaraderie, but like a lot of his books are kind of based off
Hmm.
of that point, or like that way of life, or the culture piece of it, right? It's like, you got to take care of people who are in your arena, or I don't know what the verbatim word is in the military, like in your charge. Thank you. In your charge. I was like, in
Yeah.
my head, I know what it is. But you have to take people take care of them in your charge. And like, that's super important when it comes to, like, I don't want to say the civilian side, but in all aspects of life, right? Like, if you want to be there and help too, because it's like, connecting people is, to me, I think it's easy, right? Because you're like, oh, I know, but it's like, sometimes people don't. It's like, they could be one step away from like not going a different direction, right? So it's like, if you can connect them with someone who can relate with them and who can understand them, you have done a good, like, added value in a sense, even though you haven't directly done it. That's huge when it comes to this world and just life, because life throws you curveballs and you're like, what? I was not not in a baseball game. No, thank you. I do not want that at my, like, I don't want any baseballs at me. So yeah, no. Like, no, thank you. Okay, so another question. I always like to ask this: if you had a billboard that reached billions of people, it could be an emoji, it could be a paragraph, it could be a phrase. What would you put on it?
There's so many choices. So,
Mm.
you know, I'd probably put like what my personal philosophy is. And like some of the things that you were saying before, right? Like Simon Sinek, his book Leaders Eat Last. That's all about
Well, I have that right here.
the
Oh, I
military
had it.
stuff.
I'm like trying to find it. I have
Yeah.
it here. I was like, I have it right here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but and it lends like, my leadership philosophy when I was in the military was mission first, people always. Um, and a lot of times like some of these sound like, um superficial, but it's really in how your actions on whether or not um it's true to who your philosophy is. But I've learned that's still my leadership philosophy today. Again,
Mhm.
like I'm in a mission driven field. So mission first, people always, or what we say, mission first, security always.
Mhm.
But people on my team, people that I lead, like that's just how I am. But my personal philosophy, which is probably what I would put on the billboard, is
Mhm.
1%. Be 1% better than you were the day before. Every day is a new day to change, to start over. Um, or, and in that same thread of like 1%, something that I try to do is leave every person, place, or situation better than I got there for it. Whether it's instilling some information, whether it's like the Airbnb that I'm in right now, like I do a good job cleaning it up when I leave, you know, smiling at someone, giving them a compliment, however it is, like 1%, be 1% better than you were yesterday. And so that's probably what I would um, put on a billboard, especially also when we think about change, when we think about
Mhm.
wanting to get that six pack abs, or, you know, when we want to make these we think about it in the big sense, but you have to do it a little at a time. And you can't beat yourself up if you fall back. Just do better next time, do better tomorrow. Um, and so just be better, like 1%. That's it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
1% better
Yeah.
than you were the day before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I love
so
that. I got
that would be on the
goosebumps when you said
billboard.
mission. When you said mission first, people always, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And 1%, yeah, I like try better next time, right? Like the world still goes, right? Like you woke up, you're living, like try again, right? Like get up, try again. It's like at the end of the day, failure is not like it's a mental game. And if you give up, then like you have to decide if you want to like pivot or like just don't give up, right? Like keep going, have the grit and the moxie, grit or moxie depends, right? Both same but different. But yeah, no, the 1% is good. Yeah, I really do. Yeah, I like that a lot because it's a mental, physical, and just like I just love the mission first. People always. I feel like I've heard it before, and again, that's yes, preach, right? Like the hands up emoji, like yes,
Yes.
yeah, preach.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of like other. So another question. Do you have anything cooking behind the scenes that you want to share? Because I will say, tech, especially in the cyber field, is very technical. There's a lot of acronyms, right? There's a lot of like just. Is there anything that you're doing that people can keep an eye out for if they want to listen or join
Yeah.
or anything you're doing?
Um, well, I have a few more of talks like this that I do. I love, you know, again, sharing my story. Um, you know, it might, like you said, it might help somebody. Um, if not, then thanks for listening. You can
Yeah,
forget it
yeah,
later.
yeah,
But um,
yeah.
I have, I guess I have my own show, podcast, whatever you want to call it, on YouTube. It's unfortunately right now it's been not as consistent as we've liked it to, as you know, a pet project, and we are the recorders, editors, posters, everything. But my coworker Megan Maley and I have a show called Cocktails and Socktails. Basically, we have a drink, talk about cyber. Um, Sometimes it's just the two of us, sometimes we have a guest, and, you know, try to bring it to the everyday person, try and break it down. It can seem so much, too much, I like, you know, for most people. So if we can, you know, have them share their stories, whether it's stories like cyber stories, like, you know, we've had some cool people that have done some really cool things, or if it's just, you know, what they're doing. Like we had somebody where she owns a space, cyber, and like outer space.
Oh, that's cool. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
and that was a
Yeah,
really, and so we've learned a lot on it, but we've also gotten
yeah.
the opportunity to kind of, you know, break it down, if you will. So
And that I will
cocktails and
say
socktails.
that is super important when it comes to cyber, when it comes to technical language. Like I think people like don't give it a chance in a sense. They're like, whoa, like what is this language, right? It's like it's almost like a foreign language, but it's like the more that you can break it down into digestible material for the everyday individual, like you could inspire someone who will be like a next space pilot. I don't know. I'm just like throwing that out there, right? Or rocket scientist. I don't know. You could like right. There's like you never know how like if you can simplify it and you can make it and put it in their perspective. I think that's a huge thing too. When you said when you joined aviation school or when you went to Microsoft, you had someone put it in aviation terms. That's so important when it comes to one communication, right? But then also like painting a picture for someone so they can understand it, because they'll probably do it for someone else. It's just like, it's almost a domino effect when it comes to that standpoint. And I think that you had your former manager on there too. Was she part of like a choir? I feel like she was, like, she did some musical stuff. Did I just make that up? I probably made that up, but I felt like she had like,
Jen, my friend Jen,
yeah.
who was on the podcast. I was like, my manager, I was going to say, when Lily watches this, she's going to be like, no, I cannot carry a tune.
Yeah. She was like in some, like, she was an orchestra. I don't know. She was, or like she was
an opera singer.
Opera singer. Oh my gosh, that is hard. That's really hard. Kudos to her.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm tone deaf. I can dance. I can teach dance, but like singing, I'm gonna lip sync. We'll do that. Oh yeah. So, one last, I guess, a couple last questions. One is like probably more in depth than the last one. If you could give yourself a piece of advice or some advice before you headed on the journey that you went several years ago, what would you give yourself? And then I guess it's two-parter. Like, what would you give to someone who's kind of in the same situation that you were in when? Yeah, I guess it's kind of it might be same, might be different, might be If there's any, if they're same or different.
So I think advice that I would give myself is just maybe like trust yourself. I think, good, bad, and indifferent. I would not be here today without anything that happened to me. And so I don't think I would change anything that's happened. And so, because I could say, oh, like, don't drive down to the bar that night, like that one night, that could be the advice that I give. But if that stuff if those things did not happen, I would not be where I am today. And I love what I do. I love my life that I live. And so I don't know whether it would be better, worse. It'd definitely be different. So just trust yourself. And then, anybody else who is potentially going through any good, bad, and different, like, keep moving forward, especially if it's like something that's bad. Like, just, there are certain things that say like fail forward. If you fail, just keep moving forward. One step in front of the other. You don't have to be sprinting, but just keep going. As silly and as it sounds, like, this too shall pass, and it sucks right now, but you can be better for it. But just keep moving, just keep going forward. Pivot.
I always say I fail with flying colors, right? Like, just
like, that's a really good one.
Because they're colorful, right? Because you're just like, oh my gosh. And then last question is, if people have questions, just maybe about Microsoft, or maybe about your background, or just have questions about like how they can get involved in supporting veterans too, like how can they get in touch with you?
Or follow you? LinkedIn is the easiest way to find me. And I try to make sure to answer to everyone, or like if people want to meet or have questions, like, I try to make time for everyone, within my capacity. Now, if I get an influx, like, it might take a while, but I do try and at least respond to everyone. So that's one thing I try and be really good at. Because again, I know there were others who are there for me, so I want to pay that forward and be there for others.
And I will say on like the other side too, like, I've messaged people and like people are busy. Like, if you want to get in touch with someone, keep going. Like, consistency is key, right? It's just like, I would say if you want to connect with her, like, message her again, right? Like, I think we all get busy, and sometimes we'll read something and I'll be like, oh shoot, I read it and I didn't respond to it. Like, anyway, so I've had that situation where
the other day. I was like, I responded in my head and I realized I never responded to you. So bump it up, because it definitely can get chaotic.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Carley, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you. You too.